Twins of Reddit. What's your embarrassing story involving your twin's partner? My mom is an identical twin. She and her sister were always dressed alike and hated it. So one year for Halloween, my grandpa took my mom costume shopping and my grandma took my aunt. When they got home, they were so excited to show each other their costumes, but when they came out of their room, they were wearing the same thing.
We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description.
Story 2. I'm not a twin, but my mom and my aunt are identical twins. As they've gotten older, I think they are more distinguishable. But from behind, most people think they look exactly the same. My aunt and uncle were round for dinner when my aunt was in the kitchen preparing some food. Then my stepdad comes in, hugs her from behind, and kissed her neck. All my aunt said was, "Wrong, sister." Everyone thought it was hilarious, but my stepdad was very apologetic and embarrassed for a long time. Story 3. This story is so prime and I'm so excited to tell it. So I used to do musicals, like singing, dancing musicals. My brother came to a performance and was at the greeting line afterwards. He goes up to the lead actress in the show and says, "Great job, congrats, what a show." To which she responds, "Oh, I wasn't in the show actually, it was my twin sister, but you were fantastic." To which my twin brother says, "I wasn't in the show either." That's when the actual lead actress and I walk up wondering why they both look so damn confused. I've been laughing about it for years. Story 4. This is actually my friend's story. She went to see a play at a university with her identical twin. Her sister said that there was a shortcut to the theater by cutting through some class building. My friend didn't think that that made sense, but her sister seemed confident about it, so she followed along. Then, suddenly, her sister opens a classroom door and says, "Let's go in here." My friend goes inside and freaks out when she sees a bunch of paintings of what looks like herself completely naked. It turns out her sister had posed nude for an art class and thought that that would be a fun surprise. Story 5. Mr. Clark. I grew up in a small town where if you were walking down the road and your neighbors were outside, you smiled and waved. For years, I would take walks as a kid, smiled and waved all the time to a dear old gentleman, Mr. Clark. I was sad when I learned he passed away. He was well liked in the community. A couple of weeks after he passed, I went for a walk, and as I approached his house, I saw a familiar face. It was Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark was dead. A chill went through me. I felt frozen, but yet able to walk. I felt sheer terror. In that second, it was confirmed ghosts are real. But no one would believe me, so I kept it to myself. For a couple of weeks, I saw Mr. Clark in his yard a couple of times, and I hurried on by his house as fast as I could. That feeling of sheer terror always at the surface. Mr. Ghost Clark was a little off. He didn't smile, he didn't wave. I couldn't take it anymore, so I mentioned Mr. Clark to my bestie's mom who lived 3 houses down from Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark was a twin. The happy twin passed and the curmudgeon Clark was still alive and kicking. I will never forget the feeling of nearly losing my bowels the first time I saw Ghost Clark after he passed. I will also never forget the laughter my friend's mom couldn't hold back when I told her my ghost story. Story 6. I fancied a twin in high school and couldn't realize why in one class she spoke to me, yet in another didn't know what I was on about. It took me 4 months and just bumping into them both on the walk home, and I literally went, "There's 2 of you!" Story 7. My grandpa has a twin brother, and they look nearly identical, even now in their late 70s. My mom told me that when I was a toddler, we were at a family reunion. Apparently, my grandpa was holding me and talking to my parents, and then his twin brother walked up to us, and my reaction was to say, stunned and wide-eyed, "Two grandpas." I must have been really happy to have not one, but 2 amazing grandpas to interact with. Is it just me, or are a lot of these stories just like twin stories? Nothing to do with the partners. Or I guess people are misinterpreting it as like the partner meaning the other twin? Or maybe I'm misinterpreting it. Maybe partner does mean the other twin. Either way, more stories. Story 8. I'm not the twin, but I was dating a guy on and off for years, long distance, and eventually came to find out that the guy I had been on and off dating was banging his twin brother and his twin brother's wife. I couldn't believe it at first, but then a whole lot of things started to make sense the more I thought about it. I had been friends with him for a solid 15 years, and in that whole time, he never really dated anyone but me. But he spent so much time with his twin brother and even more with his twin brother's wife. We're no longer dating. This is a whole new level of Sweet Home Alabama. Story 9. I'm not a twin, but dated one of 2 twin brothers in high school. The other twin also had a girlfriend at the school. One day, someone in my class pulls me aside to nervously tell me he thinks my boyfriend is cheating on me. He was fairly new at the school and didn't know yet that they were twins. It gave us all a good laugh when the story got around, and the guy was pretty relieved to hear that there was no cheating going on. Story 10. Not a twin, but I had a pair of teachers at my middle school who were identical twins. They tended to dress similarly, and I spent a lot of time confused as to how they could move around the school so quickly, until someone had told me that there were two of them and that they were twins. This was right before one of them got pregnant though, so I would have figured it out eventually. Story 11. I used to ride around a lake and there was this buff dude running laps opposite direction all the time. For so long, I thought that dude was just super fast. Like, I must have always ran into him during cooldown section, but man, I'm hitting 12 miles per hour on average and 20 in the flats. And I would always run into him again at the halfway mark. For months, I thought this dude was just dropping the hammer after I rounded a bend. I started riding harder and harder. Then, one day, I noticed at some point he must have changed shorts, because he was in gray at the first pass, and not at the second. Then, I figured it out. They were twins, and one of them screwed up on the shorts color that day. Every day, they went out running roughly in sync to get some exercise and to screw with people. Story 12. There was a screwed up story about the twins in my country. 2 baby girls were swapped in the hospital, and one twin came back with the other family. Their daughter stayed with her twin sister. Girls were completely different, but the family thought, they're just not identical twins. They found out the truth when all 3 girls were in high school. The real twins were constantly called differently, and strangers would approach them and say hi. They lived in a relatively small town, so finally some common friends organized their meeting. Although they look identical, they are completely different people. One of them likes metal music and wears black clothes. The story, though, didn't end up so well. Although they sued the hospital, both families are devastated by the whole story. Story 13. My identical twin brother, my wife, and myself all went to school together and got jobs at the same place after passing boards. Since there's some rules regarding family working together, I was not hired to the same unit as my wife, but my twin was. It was a lot of fun, taking lunches together, that kind of stuff. But there was one social worker who just couldn't grasp that my brother and wife were not the married ones. She would compliment me on how cute they were together, comment on social media how great a couple they were, even talk about how much my kids take after their dad, referring to him. It's all benign and we laugh about it, but she really laid it on thick. Story 14. My dad and uncle are twins. 2 to 3 times a year they'll show up to dinner or they'll be at each other's houses wearing the exact same outfit, only different brands. At first it was funny, but now we know it just happens. People mix them up all the time. Multiple times a month they're telling people that they're not the other. Acquaintances and work associates have thought they're having an affair. My dad was confronted once and had to explain to the guy, who was a couple drinks in apparently, that he's not his brother. An actual story from when they were kids. They're almost 3 years old and share a room with 2 wooden frame twin beds. That Christmas, they got a plastic tool chest toy set thing. My grandma says it wasn't more than 3 weeks after Christmas when she goes into their room and the beds are completely taken apart. The head and footboard bolts were removed. The slats were removed and separated. They had no idea how it happened. My grandpa called up the company handyman who put it back together. Couple days later, same exact thing, only my grandparents are pissed now. They got rid of the wood bed frames and got 2 metal cots with the springs, which lasted about a week. My grandma walks into their room and found one of the beds completely taken apart, each spring removed. The twins thought they were working together on the second cot. One of them was grabbing the fabric and pulling it to ease the tension, and the other was using the back of the plastic hammer to pry out the spring. They ended up losing tool chest privileges. Grandma, come on, how did you not piece that one together? They got a tool set, things were disassembled. How else could that happen? Story 15. I was with my twin brother at the supermarket this one time, and judging from this story, I'm guessing that obviously we look the same from the back. But not exactly the front because I'm a woman. My brother's girlfriend was shopping at the same store as us that day and comes up behind me and smacks my bottom, saying, "Hey love." Jokingly, I turn around and say it back. The look on her face made me regret what I did. Story 16. My identical twin sister was dating the president of a fraternity on campus, and during one of the frat's date night events, she went with her boyfriend, and I was set up as a date for one of his brothers. Towards the end of the night, I got separated from my date, and my sister's extremely drunk boyfriend put his arm around me while sis was in the bathroom. Boyfriend leaned in to kiss me. Venue was super dark, so I think it was an honest mistake. So I backed up to set the record straight. He asked if I was down for a threesome with my own twin sister. I still feel bad for ditching my date, but I had to get out of there ASAP. Ew, ew, ew. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? I mean, you're the president of a fraternity. I don't exactly expect higher, but come on. Story 17. Only tangentially related to topic, but I feel like sharing. On my last day as manager of a restaurant, a new girl was hired. I continued to drink there, and she and I got to know each other a little. Mostly just drink and smoke. Gave her a ride here and there, texted and such, went on for a year. Then I started seeing her fairly frequently at a new place. She would always hug me and seemed genuinely happy to see me. It was nice. I could feel real affection in her hugs. One day I saw her and everything seemed like usual, but I didn't feel anything when we hugged. I was confused, but I figured maybe it was just my imagination since I hadn't done anything wrong. To be honest, it really bothered me. I thought about it all week. Then the next week I saw her with her identical twin. I was surprised and very relieved. Turns out it happens all the time and her sister plays along as if she knows me because it's just faster than explaining. Story 18. One of my good friends in college, we'll call her Ellie, has a twin sister. We'll call her Sister. Sister had a boyfriend while Ellie was blissfully single. We were all over at Sister's place making dinner together and having some beers. Ellie went to grab something out of the fridge, so her back was to the room. Sister's boyfriend walked by, gave her a casual but firm butt grab, and went on his way to the counter to, chop something. Ellie gasped and turned around. The room stopped. We all just stared and waited for boyfriend to notice he had grabbed the wrong twin. You could see the exact moment he realized Sister, his girlfriend, was not in fact at the refrigerator. She was on the other side of the room. He slowly looked back down at the cutting board. He couldn't even process the shame. He apologized profusely. Ellie was horrified for a second, but after she realized it was an honest mistake, she thought it was funny. He literally could not make eye contact with her for a week. Story 19. My girlfriend is an identical twin. They're a pair of twins who will wear the same kinds of clothes and crap to screw with you. The only thing that you could use to differentiate between them is a few small scars on my girlfriend's wrist that her twin doesn't have. So anyway, I was over at their house watching TV and snuggling with my girlfriend when she gets up to go to the bathroom. I thought nothing of it, but she was gone for quite a while. She comes back 15 minutes later and sits down again, and I ask her a question about the show we were watching. She looks panicked and confused for a second before letting out a very shaky, I don't know. I thought that was weird as we were watching her favorite show and she knew just about everything. I take a glance at her wrist and I notice that she doesn't have any scars. I immediately realize what has happened. I've been subjected to this many times. And say, "Nice joke, Tara, where's Jess?" That's when my girlfriend jumps out from behind the wall, laughing her butt off. And I notice that her sister Tara is cackling next to me as well. Jess says through her laughter, "It took you less time than it usually does to realize. Good job." Story 20. I was friends with this girl a while back and she had an identical twin sister, impossible to tell apart. They always dressed the same, had the same haircut and style, everything was the same. The only difference was that one was the sweetest girl you could ever meet and the other was basically, Satan. So one day at school, I thought that Satan wasn't there that day because I didn't see both walk in that morning. So I go up to the sweet one to ask her how her day was going. Next thing I know, I get slapped in the face so hard. I was like, what the hell did I do? Then she started laughing her maniacal laugh when she's pleased by hurting someone. That's when I realized that it was Satan the whole time. Later that day, I told the sweet one what happened, and she just starts laughing. Then she tells me that she's really sweet. She's just mean to guys that she likes. Needless to say, that was the last time I ever got those two mixed up. Story 21. My best friend Dan is an identical twin. His brother Jason is an active addict. He's stolen from anywhere and anyone he possibly can and has burned all of his bridges. It eventually got to the point where Jason essentially stole Dan's identity. He was able to hack into Dan's bank and PayPal accounts, transferring money into his account, and even opened up credit cards in Dan's name. Since Dan lived in New Jersey and Jason lived in South Carolina at the time, it was hard to get the police to do anything, and the banks weren't of much help either. Story 22. Not really a partner story and also not a twin, but something funny that happened when I was in high school. In VO Tech, one of my classmates had an identical twin brother. One day they decided to switch places in their classes and see if their teacher would notice. The second my teacher walked into the room, he looked at the twin and said, "Get out of my class." He stood up and asked how the teacher knew. He said, "I just saw your brother at his locker in the hallway." Plus, there was the fact that he didn't sit in the seat his brother usually sat in, and their hairstyles were slightly different, but just enough to see a clear difference. Man, they fumbled that bit hard. Even if you're identical twins, if your hair is different, do you really think you can get away with it? And come on, they should have set up like a game plan like, oh, I always sit at this desk in this class and talk to these people, like, come on. Story 23. Am a twin, fraternal. Have dated an identical twin twice. This first time, his twin developed a sixth sense for incoming romantic attention and would hunch his shoulder before/whenever I walked up behind him. The other guy claimed he couldn't possibly date just one woman because he just found out his twin was gay and needed to make up for it? Yeah, we didn't date after that. Both times our parents thought it was so perfect. Story 24. Alrighty, so I'm an identical twin, female. One day, my twin, her husband, and I went over to our mom's house. Our older sister was there visiting with our 2 nieces and nephew. This was the day my brother-in-law finally mixed us up. A little extra backstory, my brother-in-law had just gotten done working a 32-hour shift, so he was very tired and slap happy at this point. Also, without planning it at all, my twin and I are both wearing red t-shirts and jeans with our hair up. So my twin and I are standing in the living room chatting with our mom, and my twin is holding our youngest niece. My brother-in-law steps out to go use the restroom. Well, in that time, our niece decided that she wanted to hold me, so I take her from my twin. My brother-in-law comes back from the bathroom and walks right up behind me and puts his hand on my waist. I lean to the side and ask, "What are you doing?" He says, "Nothing, you okay?" And I respond, "Yeah, I'm fine," with a very puzzled look on my face. Mind you, my twin is standing 4 feet away from me watching all of this happen. He then proceeds to kiss my cheek and smack my butt. My twin then looks at him and goes, "Babe?" He walks over next to her and says, "Yeah?" And she replies, "Babe!" And he then proceeds to look at both of us. All of a sudden, a look of horror spreads across his face. He smacks his hands to the sides of his cheek like the cover of Home Alone and screams, "No!" He runs outside, freaking out, while my twin and I fall to the floor laughing like hyenas at his mistake. He comes back in eventually and starts rambling, saying he needs to call my husband and apologize for kissing me and smacking my butt. While he is frantically calling my husband, we are still rolling on the floor trying to catch our breath. Moral of the story, double check which twin you are approaching, or else you will make a very funny mistake. Story 25. When my twin and I were younger, we shared a laptop between us for schoolwork and such. One day I sat the computer down to do something for a minute, and when I came back, the slideshow screensaver was on. This is how I found out that my twin was into gay, furry, adult content. The idiot had saved all of it to the photos library of our computer, and the slideshow screensaver displayed it to our entire family in all of its furry glory. It was an awkward dinner that night. Story 26. Fraternal twin here, I don't know if that counts. My brother and I growing up looked almost entirely identical. That changed with puberty, obviously, since he's a dude and I'm not. However, the late onset of puberty for us led to an uncomfortable situation that resulted in a 4-year fight and a stupidly prolonged sexuality crisis. Bear with me while I explain. We were both late bloomers. Therefore, until the end of our first year of high school, I was the same height or just a smidge taller than him. We don't look alike, but only because I prefer to have my hair long and wear it up. So it's the end of middle school, 8th grade. My brother and I had vastly different interests at that age. I was a consummate nerd, shy, and involved in extracurriculars and sports from dawn to dusk. My brother was moody and spent most of his time getting into trouble with his burnout friends and playing video games. He was social and dated girls, and I was pure as the driven snow and got straight A's. Despite this, we were both into skateboarding, blame the late 90s and early 00s, and dressed similarly, polo shirts, jeans, and those huge skater shoes. Because of this difference in grades and interests, we were placed in different classrooms and rarely crossed paths. Our parents were divorced and shared custody, and during that time we didn't get along very well. Thus, we mostly lived in separate houses to preserve the peace. It was a pretty big middle school, and the high school it fed into was even bigger. So from age 11 to 14, my brother and I really didn't interact much. We had no classes together and didn't share any friends. That summer, I had an unfortunate and uncomfortable spat of head lice that refused to go away. I picked it up on a sleepaway trip for band. See above regarding being a nerd. Shortcuts for girls were experiencing a brief resurgence of popularity, so I cut my hair really short. I hated the upkeep of having it long in the back like a girl's cut, so I got something that was pretty androgynous, figuring it would grow out by the end of the year. Unfortunately, come to find out, it was too much like my brother's haircut. So it's the first month of high school. New school, but a lot of the same people from our middle school. My brother comes tearing out of nowhere one day at lunch and knocks my food out of my hands, yelling at me that I had seduced his girlfriend and I was a nasty slur. His girlfriend was some chick on the color guard that I had maybe seen all of 3 times during morning marching band practice. I had never spoken to her. I only knew he was dating her because he constantly complained that she had broken up with him over something when our parents forced us to spend every weekend at the same house. I had never been mistaken for my brother, so it didn't even occur to me what had happened. But thanks to the early 00's androgyny of skater punk fashion and my crappy haircut, we apparently looked so similar at that time that she thought I was his twin brother. Apparently, I was the newer and shinier, more wholesome version of my brother because I wasn't a burnout, didn't have jerk friends, and got good grades. Their latest fight apparently was that my brother couldn't be more like his brother, who was going places and didn't get detention every week. Now, this is only really funny because I faced a choice at this point. I could defend myself by denying up and down that I had ever interacted with her, which was true. But because, as I said, we didn't really get along well during that time, and I was tired of hearing him complain all the time, I chose option B, make a spectacle at lunch. I really laid into it about how if he wasn't such a screw-up, maybe his poor girlfriend wouldn't be looking to cross over to the other side to get away from him. His friends, ever the charmers, thought this was hilariously funny, so he was teased and bullied mercilessly for this. My friends weren't really the type to care about that sort of thing, so the whole incident wouldn't have affected me at all. Aside from my brother being apocalyptically mad at me for the next 4 years for ruining his high school reputation. The only blowback I got was that my choice to deliberately upset him put me in the awkward position of having to explain that I wasn't gay. I just didn't deny what he said because I was mad. I was also a fairly quiet kid, you understand, so this was the one incident that I was known for, other than being in sports, student council, and having the highest grades in my graduating class. Therefore, I was stuck in this loop, overcompensating for the first year of high school in which the whole school knew that I came off as masculine enough to, at a distance, be mistaken for my brother. By sophomore year, I had given up the sports I liked that were coded as too gay, volleyball and softball, and I grew my hair back out and avoided skateboarding. I was self-conscious to the point of paranoia about it, so while my brother was messing around with girls non-stop, I remained pure as the driven snow, because my one instance of public teenage drama had given me such anxiety and embarrassment about sexuality and intimacy that I didn't dare touch anything even remotely adjacent to that subject with a 10-foot pole. Well, come to find out in my first couple years of college that I am in fact gay. However, I was so into overcompensating that I basically wasted the better part of 5 years in which I would have figured it out. My guess is that I would have come to Jesus, so to speak, freshman year had it not been for my poor brother's girlfriend mistaking me for a boy, and me spending the next couple of years trying to desperately outrun the truth that my brother had accidentally revealed to the entire school. Okay, all that angst aside though, she was pretty hot. Call me, Emma.